A little boy with Korean eyes and tight black curls asks the crying woman at the gate, "Why are you sad?" He doesn't know she spent 6 years imagining his face. He doesn't know she was told he was dead. He doesn't know the woman kneeling on the other side of these iron bars, her hand reaching through, is his biological mother. Her name is Amara. She is one of over 160,000 Korean children sent overseas for adoption, a system built on a secret. For decades, mothers were told their Barbies had died or were pressured into signing papers they couldn't read. This is the story of what it takes to find a lie and what happens when you finally reach through the gate. It begins in a city called Yeongjongba, South Korea, in 2014. Amara, 24, an English teacher from Atlanta, meets a U.S. Army sergeant named Min-jun. Theirs is a whirlwind romance, a bubble of joy in a country that will soon show them both its hardest face. When Amara gets pregnant, Min-jun is deployed with 2 weeks' notice. He promises to return to marry her to make a life. The letters stop after 3 months. Then his unit informs her he was killed in a training accident. Amara is alone, pregnant, and in a country where the term for a woman like her is Hunhaulma, mixed blood mother, a social stain. She is told, gently at first, by a well-meaning coworker to visit a maternity home for unwed mothers. The home, run by a charity linked to a large adoption agency, is clean, quiet, and feels like a waiting room for a decision she hasn't made yet. The social workers are kind. They explain that as a foreigner without a spouse, her visa will expire. They explain that raising a mixed-race child in Korea is nearly impossible. The child will be bullied, ostracized, denied opportunities. They show her pictures of happy Korean children with smiling white families in America. They tell her this is the most loving choice. They do not tell her that the agency receives a donation of several $1,000s for every child placed overseas. They do not tell her that a government commission will later call this a system of coercion and fraud. Months Amara resists, then the pressure becomes material. Her teaching contract is not renewed. Her landlord asks her to leave. The maternity home says she can stay only if she is proceeding with an adoption plan. In a small office, a woman slides a document toward her. It is in Korean. Amara's Korean is conversational, but the legal terms are a fog. It just states you are unable to provide, the woman says. It's a formality. Amara signs. She is 8 months pregnant. She is told the baby will go to a temporary foster home while she gets back on her feet, that she has a revocation period. This is a lie. Her son is born on a rainy morning in May. They let her hold him for 6 hours. She names him Elijah after her grandfather. She memorizes the curve of his ear, the tight, dark curls against his scalp, the way his tiny hand wraps around her thumb. A social worker takes him for a checkup. He does not come back. When Amara asks, frantic, they tell her he has a minor infection and must stay in the nursery. For 3 days, she is given excuses. On the 4th day, the director sits her down. Her face is a mask of practiced sorrow. "There were complications," she says. "I am so sorry, your baby did not survive." Amara's world fractures. She is given a small box with a lock of hair and a photograph. She is told the remains were handled by the hospital. She collapses into a grief so total it has no sound. She returns to America a ghost. For 6 years, she visits the grave of a son she never buried, a plot-marked, unknown infant in a cemetery in Georgia. She lives inside a memory that lasts 6 hours. But a system built on lies is fragile. In 2022, a South Korean Truth Commission uncovers thousands of cases like Amara: forced separations, forged death certificates, Barbies declared dead and then sold for adoption overseas, a network of maternity homes, agencies, and hospitals that treated children as a commodity. Amara sees a news article online. Her breath stops. There is a hotline for birth mothers to report fraud. She calls, a caseworker listens. They take her son's supposed date of death. They cross-reference it with hospital records, then with adoption agency export records. 2 weeks later, the caseworker calls back. Her voice is careful. "We found an export record for a male infant, mixed African-American and Korean, leaving Incheon Airport on May 28, 2015. The listed birth date matches your son's. The destination was an agency in Minnesota." Amara is silent. The world tilts. The death certificate was a forgery. Your son is likely alive. The next search takes months. The adoption agency is obstructive, citing privacy. The Korean agency that processed the paperwork has closed, its records scattered, but the Truth Commission has power. They subpoena files, and in a dusty warehouse in Seoul, they find a folder. Inside is a photograph of a toddler, 2 years old, with unmistakable curls. His name is listed as Lee Jae-hun. The file states he was adopted by a family in Minneapolis at age 11 months. But there is a second note, stamped 3 years later: adoption dissolution, child returned to Korean agency custody. Her son was given up a second time. The American family could not handle the behavioral issues, the trauma of a transatlantic rupture they did not understand. He was sent back, a process called rehoming, a black mark in a file. He was placed in a Korean orphanage, the very system he was supposed to be saved from. The trail goes cold for 2 years, then resurfaces at the Sujang home for children on the outskirts of Seoul. The file is updated monthly. He is 6 years old. Amara books a flight that night. She has no plan, only a magnetic pull toward a set of iron gates and a child who thinks he is an orphan. She does not know if she can speak. She does not know if she will be allowed to see him. She knows only that every mile in the air is a mile closer to the 6-hour memory that has defined her life. She lands, takes a train, then a taxi. The orphanage is a modest, low building surrounded by a high fence. Autumn leaves blow across the courtyard. And there, playing alone with a red ball, is a little boy, her little boy. She approaches the gate, her legs weak. He looks up, and he asks the question that breaks the sky open. The word "why" hangs in the air between the iron bars. Amara cannot speak. Her throat is sealed by 6 years of grief suddenly rendered obsolete. She can only look at him, this real, living boy, and feel the ground under her vanish. A staff member notices. A woman in a neat uniform walks over, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern to a firm, practiced neutrality. She gently guides the boy, Elijah Jae-hun, away from the gate. "It's time for lessons," she tells him. He looks back once, confused, then disappears inside. The director's office is small, overheated. Director Park is a man in his 50s with tired eyes. He listens as Amara, her voice shaking, pours out the story. The pregnancy, the forged death certificate, the Truth Commission, the file. She shows him the documents. He does not look surprised. He sighs. "Miss," he says, "this is not the first time a birth parent has come here. The story is always tragic, but my duty is to the child's stability. Jahan has been here for 3 years. He believes his parents are gone. He has trauma. To introduce this, it could be devastating." Amara feels a cold dread. "He is my son. I have proof." "You have proof of birth," Director Park corrects softly. "The adoption, even if fraudulent, was legally finalized. Your parental rights were terminated in Korea and under American law. You are, in the eyes of the state, a stranger." He leans forward. "And there is another family. The Minnesota family still holds the legal adoption decree. They dissolved the placement, but they never formally terminated their rights. It is a mess. To him, you are a kind woman who cried at the gate. To the law, you do not exist." The first door slams shut, but Amara did not cross an ocean to be told no by a man in a small office. She finds a lawyer, Kim Sae-yeon, who specializes in adoptee rights. Sae-yeon is brisk, brilliant, and angry. She has stacks of similar cases on her desk. "The system," she tells Amara, "is a house of cards built on a mountain of lies, but toppling it for one child requires prying apart 2 legal systems." Her plan is aggressive. They will petition the Korean family court to nullify the original adoption decree based on fraud. Simultaneously, they will contact the American family in Minnesota to seek a formal relinquishment. The first obstacle is the Minnesota family. Amara's lawyer makes contact. The response is not hostility, but a profound, awkward sadness. The couple, the Pattersons, are kind people who admit they were in over their heads. They describe a beautiful, grieving toddler who wouldn't eat, who screamed through the night, who pushed them away. They say the adoption agency offered no post-placement support, no warning about institutional trauma. After 2 years of struggle, they were told by a different agency that rehoming to a specialized orphanage in Korea was the most compassionate choice. They signed papers they didn't fully understand. They have carried the guilt ever since. They agree immediately to sign over their parental rights, one wall down. But the Korean legal system is a labyrinth. The adoption agency that handled the original export, now defunct, has no records. The hospital that issued the fake death certificate refuses to comment. The judge assigned to the case is skeptical. He sees a foreign mother who signed a paper, however under duress, and an adopted child who has now been in the country for most of his life. The child's peace, the judge says in an early hearing, is the paramount consideration. Then Sa-yeon plays her card. She submits a declaration from the National Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It states unequivocally that the practices of the maternity home and the linked agency constituted systematic fraud and coercion. It names Amara's case specifically. The judge orders a home study of the orphanage and a psychological evaluation of Jahan. The evaluation is conducted by Dr. Lee, a child psychologist. She spends weeks with Jahan. Her report is a devastating portrait of a child living in quiet pieces. He is polite, withdrawn, and excels at being invisible. He has no memory of America, only a deep-seated fear of abandonment. He calls all female staff teacher, never mom. He has a recurring dream. He tells Dr. Lee about a lady with a soft voice who holds him, but her face is always dark. He draws pictures of a woman behind a fence. When Dr. Lee shows him a photo of Amara mixed in with photos of other women, he stares at it for a full minute. He does not pick it, but he touches the edge of the photograph. She was sad, he says. Dr. Lee's conclusion is clear. The trauma is not the possibility of a new attachment, but the ongoing reality of having none. His stability is the stability of a deep freeze. He is waiting, Dr. Lee writes, for someone to claim him. The question is not if a reunion will disrupt him, but which disruption is more ethical, the temporary chaos of being found or the permanent silence of being lost. The judge is moved but unmoved. He schedules another hearing in 3 months. The system grinds on. Meanwhile, Amara does the only thing she can. She visits the gate every day. She cannot enter, but she sits on a bench across the street. Some days Jahan is in the courtyard. She waves. He stares. One day he waves back. A week later he wanders near the fence during playtime. She has brought a picture book. She holds it up. He nods. She begins to read aloud, her voice carrying across the quiet street. He sits on the ground, listening. They do this for a week. It is a conversation made of paper and air. Director Park, watching from his window, does not stop it. He sees the boy, who usually plays alone, waiting for the hour the woman comes to read. He sees a focus in the child's eyes that wasn't there before. The institution's second door creaks open, just a crack. Amara is granted 1 supervised visit per week in a sterile playroom. The first visit is agony. Jahan is shy, clutching a toy car. Amara is terrified of saying the wrong thing. They kulk in silence for 20 minutes. At the end, as the staff member signals time is up, Jahan looks at her. "Why did you come back?" he asks. Not "why did you come," but "why did you come back?" As if some part of him knew she had been there before, Amara's heart cracks. "Because I made a promise to you a long time ago," she whispers, "that I would find you." The visits continue. A fragile thread forms. He shows her his drawings. She teaches him a simple hand clap game her grandmother taught her. He laughs, a sound so rare the staff member taking notes looks up in shock. For Amara, these hours are a stolen paradise, unbearably painful and beautiful. She is building a relationship with her son under the watchful eye of a clock and a social worker, both counting down. Then Sa-yeon uncovers something that changes everything. While digging through the defunct agency's partner records, she finds a ledger, not of children but of payments. Donations from overseas adoption agencies to the maternity home listed per child. A price tag. Next to an entry for a mixed-race male infant in May 2015, there is a number, $8,000, and a handwritten note in the margin, "Father was U.S. military, mother compliant after notification of death. Clean case." Amara was not just tricked. She was a revenue line. Her son's adoption was a transaction made more profitable by the lie of his death. It removed the risk of a mother changing her mind, but the ledger reveals something else. The notification of death was a standard protocol for certain cases. It wasn't one social worker's cruel idea, it was a business practice. Armed with this, Sa-yeon goes to the media. The story breaks on a major Korean news network, The Orphan Who Was Sold Twice. It details the forged death, the failed adoption in America, the rehoming, the ledger. Public outrage is immediate and visceral. The orphanage is flooded with calls. The judge's office receives petitions. The narrative flips from a messy private tragedy to a public scandal. Pressure builds. The orphanage board holds an emergency meeting. Director Park is now advocating for Amara. The tide within the institution is turning. The judge, sensing the shift, calls an emergency hearing. He will decide within the week whether to grant Amara temporary custody pending the full nullification case. It is the chance she has fought for. The night before the hearing, Amara is in her small rented room practicing her statement. Her phone rings. It's Sayan. Her voice is tight, urgent. Amara, sit down. I just received an email from the US Embassy. The Patterson family in Minnesota, they signed the relinquishment papers, but they sent them to the wrong legal entity, an old agency address. The papers are lost in bureaucratic limbo. Until they are formally filed with the Minnesota court and authenticated for Korea, the American adoption is still technically active. Amara feels the room spin. What does that mean? It means, Sayan says, the judge could rule tomorrow that the child has two conflicting legal parents, a defunct American adoption and a Korean birth mother seeking nullification. In a custody vacuum, the most likely outcome is that he remains a ward of the state in the orphanage until the international mess is sorted. That could take years. All the progress, the public support, the bonding visits, it could crash into a wall of red tape. Is there anything we can do? We need the Pattersons to re-sign and file the papers correctly overnight, US time. Then we need a miracle at the Korean Ministry of Justice to accept an electronic verification before 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'm calling them now. You need to call the Pattersons, make them understand. Their guilt is not enough. We need their signatures now. Amara looks at the clock. It is 10 p.m. in Seoul, 8 a.m. in Minneapolis. She has 1 hour before the hearing to accomplish the impossible. She picks up the phone, her son, future balanced on a transcontinental thread, about to snap. The phone rings in Minneapolis. A tired, guilty voice answers. Amara explains, her words tumbling over each other. The hearing is in 1 hour, the lost paperwork, the judge's warning. For a moment, there is only static-filled silence on the line. Then Mr. Patterson says, tell me exactly what we need to do. What follows is a global, digital scramble. The Pattersons rush to find a notary public at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday. Sayan in Seoul stays on the line, directing them to the correct forms on a county website. Amara watches the clock on her laptop, each minute a hammer blow. At 8:45 Seoul time, the Pattersons send a scan of the freshly signed and notarized relinquishment. It's a PDF file attached to an email, a piece of data that must now become law. Sayan forwards it to her contact at the Korean Ministry of Justice, begging for an emergency verification. The official is sympathetic but bound by protocol. Verification of a foreign document typically takes weeks. He promises to try. The hearing is at 10. At 9:50, Amara and Sayan stand outside the family court. Their phones are silent. No verification has come. We go in with what we have, Sayan says, her face grim. We argue the principle. We show the scan. We pray the judge is having a good day. The courtroom is quiet, wood-paneled. The judge enters. He listens as Sayan presents the case, the fraud, the ledger, the bond forming between mother and child, the psychological report. She presents the scanned relinquishment from Minnesota. The judge frowns. This is not authenticated. It is a picture from the internet. For all I know, you wrote it yourself. He states the brutal truth. Without the proper chain of verification, the child exists in a legal purgatory. He is inclined to maintain the status quo, the orphanage, until all international paperwork is resolved. Amara feels the victory slipping away. She asks to speak. The judge nods. She stands, her hands trembling. She does not talk about the law, she talks about the 6 hours. She describes the curve of his ear, the weight of him in her arms, the smell of his hair. She describes visiting a grave for 6 years, talking to a ghost. She describes the boy at the gate asking why she was sad. You speak of his peace, Your Honor, she says, her voice breaking. His peace is a story where his mother didn't want him. I am here to give him a better story. One where she crossed an ocean and fought through hell to get him back. The judge is silent for a long time. He looks at the photo of Jahan in the file. He looks at Amara. I am moved, he says finally, but I am not a king. I am a judge. I rule on evidence. I cannot grant custody based on a story, however compelling, when the legal parentage is in chaos. He issues his ruling. Jahan will remain at Sejong home. The nullification case will proceed, but slowly. He urges the Ministry of Justice to expedite the verification. It is a loss, dressed in kind words. Amara walks out of the courtroom numb. The press is waiting. She sees the cameras, the microphones, and feels nothing. Sayan is already on her phone, yelling at the ministry official. The story headlines that evening are brutal, mother's love defeated by bureaucracy. But the public reaction is volcanic. The image of Amara at the gate, the ledger revealing the $8,000 price tag, the judge's cold logic, it ignites a national conversation. A popular online petition demanding justice for Jahan gathers 500,000 signatures in 2 days. Korean adoptees from around the world share the story, adding their own testimonies of forged documents and lost origins. It becomes a symbol. This noise reaches an unexpected ear, the office of a senior legislator on the National Policy Committee for Health and Welfare. Representative Cha is a reformist. She sees in Amara's case a perfect, human-sized catalyst to push through long-stalled amendments to the adoption law. She calls Sayan. "Bring your client and all her documents to my office tomorrow," she says. "We are going to try something different." The next day, in a government building, Representative Cha lays out a plan. There is a rarely used presidential pardon power for cases of extreme humanitarian injustice. It is meant for political prisoners, but the language is vague. If they can get the case flagged as a national humanitarian issue, the Ministry of Justice could be compelled to issue a special order granting Amara provisional parental rights, bypassing the tangled courts entirely. It's a long shot, Cha admits. "But the public is with you, the media is with you, we will use that." A campaign is launched. Amara gives tearful interviews. Documentarians film her visits to the orphanage gate. Jahan's drawings are shown on television. The pressure on the Ministry of Justice becomes immense. Inside the orphanage, Director Park is now fully on their side. He increases the visits to 3 times a week. He allows Amara to bring Jahan his favkrata fruit, to read to him in a private room, not the sterile playroom. The bond deepens. One afternoon, Jahan calls her Amara teacher. It is not mom, but it is her name. It is a start. Then a new complication erupts. A law firm in Seoul contacts Sayan. They represent the family of Minjun, the U.S. Army sergeant, Amara's first love, Jahan's biological father. Minjun's parents, traditional and deeply ashamed of their son's relationship with a foreign woman, knew nothing of the pregnancy or the child. The news scandal has reached them. They are horrified, not by the adoption fraud, but by the public spectacle, and they have a claim. Under Korean family law, paternal grandparents can assert rights, especially if the mother is deemed unfit or the child's lineage is at stake. They are not seeking custody, their lawyer states coldly. They are seeking to block Amara's petition and have the child placed in a different, private orphanage they will sponsor. To protect the family name, the lawyer says, and to ensure he is raised with proper Korean values, not as a foreigner. It is a vicious, emotional blow. Amara is now fighting on 2 fronts, against a cold bureaucracy and against a family wielding shame as a weapon. Minjun's mother gives a short statement to a conservative newspaper. "That woman's relationship with our son was a mistake. This public drama is undignified. The child is a Kung. He should be with Korean people." Sayan is livid. They didn't want him when he was a secret. They want him now that he's a symbol. But the legal threat is real. The grandparents' petition could further confuse the court and delay everything for years. Amara makes a desperate decision. She asks to meet Minjun's parents. Sayan advises against it. It is a risk, but Amara is done with lawyers talking about her son as a legal problem. The meeting is arranged in a quiet tea room. The atmosphere is frozen. Minjun's father will not look at her. His mother, Mrs. Kung, stares with unveiled hostility. Amara speaks first. She shows them the only photo she has of Minjun, a selfie of them laughing. She talks about their son not as a soldier, but as a man who loved jazz and hated kimchi. She tells them about the pregnancy, his deployment, his promise to return. She tells them about the letter informing her of his death. She does not accuse, she shares grief. "You lost a son," she says. "I lost the father of my child. He," she says, pointing to a photo of Jahan, "lost everything. He has your son's eyes. Please, do not make him lose his mother too." There is a long, brittle silence. Mrs. Kung's stern face trembles. She picks up the photo of Jahan. She traces the shape of the eyes. Her own eyes fill. She puts the photo down, stands up, and walks out without a word. her husband follows. Amara is left alone, certain she has failed. 2 days later, the grandparents' lawyer withdraws their petition. No explanation is given. A week after that, a small package arrives at Amara's rented room. Inside is a hanbok, a traditional Korean child's outfit, beautifully made. A note in elegant handwriting reads, "For our grandson, from his homepuni." It is not an embrace, but it is a ceasefire. The second front collapses. Now all energy focuses on the presidential pardon route. Representative Cha works tirelessly. The media campaign is a constant drumbeat. Then, the miracle. The verification from the Korean Ministry of Justice comes through. The American relinquishment is recognized. The primary legal obstacle is removed. Armed with this, Representative Cha and a coalition of activists stage a sit-in at the Ministry of Justice. They present a formal petition for humanitarian intervention. The media is there. The world is watching. The Vice Minister agrees to review the case personally. A day passes, then another. Amara spends the time with Jahan at the orphanage. They are building a puzzle. He is trying to teach her a Korean children's song. She is terrible at it. He laughs. It is a perfect, ordinary moment. On the third day, Sayan calls. Her voice is shaking, but not with stress, with disbelief. The Vice Minister has issued the order. Provisional parental rights are granted to you, Amara, effective immediately. The nullification case will continue, but you can take him home. Today. Amara drops the phone. She runs to the orphanage. Director Park is waiting at the gate, a small suitcase beside him. He is smiling. He is getting his things, he says. He knows you are coming. He asked if he should bring his red ball. Jahan comes out, holding the hand of a social worker. He is wearing the jacket Amara bought him. He looks at her, at the suitcase, at the open gate. "Are we going on a trip?" he asks. "Yes," Amara says, kneeling to his level, tears streaming freely now. "We are going home." He takes her hand. They walk through the gate together. The cameras capture it all. The moment the iron bars are behind them, the headline writes itself. After 6 years, a boy steps through the gate. But this is not the end. It is the beginning of a different story. Because going home is not to America, not yet. Amara's visa is for a tourist. She has no legal right to stay in Korea long term, and Jahan, while now in her custody, is still a Korean citizen with a passport tangled in annulled adoptions. To leave the country, they need a mountain of new paperwork. To build a life, they need a country that will let them stay together. As they reach her small rented room, her first real home with her son, Amara's phone rings again. It is the US Embassy. The consul wants to meet regarding Jahan's immigration status. There is a problem, a big one. The story of the gate is over. The story of the door is just beginning. The problem at the US Embassy is a tangle of passports and politics. Jahan, the consul explains, exists in a legal black hole. He entered the United States on a Korean passport under an adopted name that is now void. He returned to Korea as a ward of the state. He has no current US immigration status, and his Korean citizenship is tied to a birth registry that lists no father. To get him an American passport, Amara must prove he is her biological son, which she can, and that he was born abroad to a US citizen parent. But Amara is the citizen parent, and that's the catch. "You never reported his birth abroad within the first year," the consul says gently. "It's a requirement to transmit citizenship. Given the fraud, we understand why, but the law is strict. We can initiate a consular report of birth abroad now, but it will require a DNA test, a mountain of documentation, and an exceptional review. It could take 6 months to a year. Until then, he cannot leave Korea." Amara looks at Jahan, Kulkung quietly at a small table in the consulate play area. They are trapped in a new kind of limbo. They have each other but no country. Sayan, ever pragmatic, finds a solution. She helps Amara apply for a long-term guardian visa, a special category for foreign parents of Korean children. It is granted, a temporary bridge. They will live in Korea, in a small apartment not far from the orphanage, while the American paperwork grinds through the system. This is where the real work begins. The victory at the gate was an earthquake. The aftershocks are daily, quiet, and profound. Jahan is not a storybook child who instantly calls her mom. He is a 6-year-old with night terrors, who hoards food under his pillow, who flinches at sudden movements. He tests her, throwing spectacular tantrums, waiting to see if she will leave. Amara, guided by weekly sessions with Dr. Lee, learns to ride each wave. She sits outside his door when he screams that he hates her. She says, "I'm still here." She makes him jelly sandwiches and cuts off the crusts because that's what he likes. She learns the Korean song he tried to teach her. Slowly, trust builds not in a leap, but in 1,000 small steps. He lets her hug him goodnight. He draws a picture of two stick figures holding hands, labeled in his clumsy handwriting, "Amara and me." He has a nightmare, and instead of crying silently, he pads into her room and climbs into her bed. She holds him as he shakes. In the morning, he doesn't mention it. He doesn't have to. Meanwhile, the legal battles reach their own conclusions. The Korean family court, bolstered by the humanitarian order and the cleared American relinquishment, formally nullifies the original adoption decree. It rules the consent was obtained by fraud. Jahan's birth certificate is restored with Amara listed as mother. The judge also orders the defunct adoption agency's remaining assets to be used to pay a small restitution to Amara and to fund a DNA registry for other separated families. The public case also forces action. Representative Cha, with Amara's testimony as her central evidence, successfully pushes through amendments to the Adoption Act. The new law mandates independent counseling for birth mothers, a 30-day reflection period before any consent is signed, and a central registry to prevent duplicate or fraudulent filings. It is named, informally, Jahan's Law. And then a letter arrives. It is from the Office of the President. The special pardon for humanitarian injustice has been formally granted, expunging any legal ambiguity from Amara's provisional status. She is, in the eyes of the Korean state, his full and rightful mother. It is a piece of paper that feels hover than any other. Life finds a rhythm. Tuesday is library day. Thursday is therapy with Dr. Lee. Sunday is video calls with Amara's mother in Atlanta, who cries every time she sees her grandson. Jahan starts at a local international school, a place with other mixed-race children. He comes home with a painted pasta necklace for Amara. He calls it a crown. One afternoon, there is a knock at the door. It is Mrs. Kung, Jahan's homepani. She stands stiffly holding a bag of persimmons. "May I come in?" she asks. Amara lets her. Jahan is shy at first, but the grandmother has brought an old board game Minjun loved as a boy. They play. Mrs. Kung's stern face softens as Jahan laughs. She does not stay long, but she begins to visit every other week. She never apologizes for the past, but her presence is a silent amends. She teaches Jahan how to write his Korean name, Kung Yun-ha, telling him it means kind and brave. She tells him stories about his father as a clumsy, funny boy. She gives him a history that isn't just a tragedy. After 8 months, the email from the US Embassy arrives. The consular report of birth abroad is approved. Jahan is a US citizen. His passport will be ready in a week. They can go home. Amara expects to feel pure joy. Instead, she feels a complex ache. Korea is no longer just the place of her loss. It is the place where she fought and won. It is where she became a mother in the daylight. They pack their suitcases. On their last day, they visit the Sejong home. Director Park hugs Jahan tightly. The staff waves, some in tears. They visit the grave Amara once thought was her son's. She leaves a single flower on the headstone marked "Unknown Infant." "Thank you," she whispers to the empty plot, "for holding my place." At Uncheon Airport, the same airport he was smuggled out of as a baby, Jahan holds his new blue passport tightly. He looks at Amara as they queue for boarding. "In America," he asks, "will I still be your son?" It is the question he has been carrying. Amara kneels right there in the terminal, ignoring the crowd. "In America, in Korea, on the moon," she says, her voice firm, "you are my son. That is the one thing that will never, ever change." He nods, a serious, satisfied nod, and takes her hand. The flight is long. Jahan sleeps with his head in her lap. Amara stares out at the clouds, thinking of the woman who arrived 6 years ago, broken and believing in a ghost. She is not that woman anymore. She is a woman with a sleeping child on her lap, a folder of legal victories, and a heart that is no longer a grave. They land in Atlanta. Her family is there, a riot of noise and tears and welcome signs. Jahan hides behind her legs, then slowly emerges, accepting a too-tight hug from his American grandmother. They settle into a house filled with light and second-hand furniture. The first night in his new room, Jahan has a nightmare. Amara goes to him. He is crying for Amara teacher. She holds him. "I'm here," she says. "Mom is here." In his sleep haze, he doesn't correct her. Weeks turn into months. The story fades from the news. Life becomes normal. Parent-teacher conferences, learning to ride a bike, arguments over vegetables. The trauma doesn't vanish, but it recedes, replaced by the mundane, glorious business of living. And then the final, surprising turn. A producer from a major documentary series contacts Amara. They want to tell the full story, not just of her, but of the hundreds of thousands affected by the same system. They ask if she will help find other birth mothers. Amara hesitates. She has fought so hard for a private life. But she thinks of the women still sitting in maternity homes, being told the same lies. She thinks of the ledger with its $8,000 price tags. She says yes. Using part of her restitution money, she funds a small non-profit, a liaison between the Korean Truth Commission and English-speaking birth mothers overseas. She names it the Elijah Project. Her first client is a woman from Canada whose daughter was adopted in 1986 under almost identical circumstances. One evening, a year after their return, Amara is making dinner. Jahan, now 7, is doing homework at the kitchen table. He looks up. "Mom," he says, the word now effortless, "can I ask you something about Korea?" "Of course, baby. When I was in the orphanage, did you really come every day?" "Yes, even when it was cold. Especially when it was cold." He thinks about this. He gets up, walks over, and wraps his arms around her waist in a rare, spontaneous hug. "Good," he says. That is the path, not in a courtroom ruling or a passport stamp, but in a child's hug in a warm kitchen, in the safety of a story that finally makes sense. The gate is closed. The door is open. The long silence is over, replaced by the ordinary, necessary noise of a family that was almost lost, but is now, against all odds, found. Amara and Jahan's story found its closing chapter in a kitchen in Atlanta. But for the system that created their tragedy, the story is still being written. Over 160,000 Korean children were sent overseas. For every reunion, hundreds of searches are still ongoing, stalled by lost files, by time, by the sheer scale of a machine built on silence. The question their story forces us to ask is not just about one mother or one child. It is about how a society decides who is worthy of a family and who can be treated as a commodity. It is about the price tag hidden behind the language of rescue. $8,000 for a clean case, a lifetime of grief for a forged signature. Jahan's law changed the paperwork in Korea, but the cultural stigma that shames unwed mothers, the economic pressure that makes adoption seem like the only choice, the global demand for children, these forces are older than any law and harder to dismantle. The ledger Amara uncovered was a record of one agency's transactions. How many other ledgers are still locked in drawers? The work of reunion is now a global movement. Adoptees in their 40s and 50s are returning to Korea with DNA kits, demanding their records. Birth mothers in their 70s, who have lived with a secret for a lifetime, are finding the courage to search. Organizations like the Elijah Project are building bridges, but they are navigating an ocean of loss. What Amara's fight ultimately proves is that the most powerful force against a system designed to erase is not a lawyer or a law, though both are necessary. It is memory, the memory of a curve of an ear, the memory of a 6-hour-old's grip, the memory of a face at a gate. These are the things bureaucracy cannot file away. These are the threads that, when pulled, can unravel an entire tapestry of lies. Her story is a testament to a dangerous, beautiful idea that love is not a passive feeling, but an active, stubborn verb. It is to search. It is to wait. It is to stand at a gate day after day. It is to sit outside a door during a tantrum and say, "I'm still here." It is to rewrite an ending that someone else wrote for you. So the next time you hear a story about international adoption, about a child finding a better life, listen closely. Ask the other question: who was the mother? What was her story? And what if she never stopped looking? Because somewhere in the world right now, another woman is staring at a document she doesn't understand. Another child is looking at a photograph wondering about the face in the dark. And between them stretches a distance that can only be crossed by a truth someone tried to bury and a love that refused to stay quiet. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more stories that challenge the official narrative, make sure to subscribe.